Okay, cool. So Jovi was assimilated by the bus step team.
Too bad they're not here.
And he's gonna show us concept art he's making for it. So yay!
Yay. How do you full screen this? F11, right?
F11.
There we go. All right. So hi, I'm Jovi. As Annie has mentioned, I got pulled in by the Billie bus stop team. Unfortunately, I think they are all asleep. Super early, but they're here with us in spirit. So I'm gonna show some of the stuff I've worked on, and I've included some stuff that they've updated, but it's from them, not from me. I will take no credit. So I was tasked to develop the main concept for Fantokyo's arena, essentially. It's a level designed around a cinema or like an opera house where Billy, the player, fights him on a big stage. And this was an interesting one because this is the first time I've done concept art for a location. And on top of that, it's character driven. So the brief was that it should be old and spooky, give the player a sense of unease when they enter. It should feature a stage where the boss fight takes place. It should be fancy because the idea is that it's more like try hard fancy rather than actual fancy. Fantokyo lives alone with his pet shark and a host of magically controlled puppets to serve as his audience, but essentially he's alone. And the one other bit of reference I was given was make it look like or feel like a cuckoo clock. So the GIF you see there is the current Fantokyo model that I've ripped from their servers. But that's not, I didn't do that, so let's just move on. So far, the location will feature three main areas: the lobby, the stage, and the dressing room. The dressing room there's no progress for that yet, but I have for the lobby and the stage. But let's start with the stage. This is the what I came up with. This is the first iteration of one of the first iterations of the stage. I will show a video. There you go. So yeah, this is my process. I just did a bunch of thumbnails and I started referencing opera houses and stage plays, and I started sketching out some story-driven angles. But as I continued doing this, I quickly realized I knew nothing about opera houses or stages. So I decided to go with a basic front view of the stage before I start developing compositions for mood and storytelling. So these are just some slight sketches. Yeah, so I decided to do the front view of the stage. And originally it was supposed to be this grand opera house. And while I was developing it, I think I captured the grand vastness of it, but I wasn't a huge fan of it because it kind of lacked some personality. So it quickly got changed to, I found a picture of an abandoned theater that was, instead of some grand open space, they tightened it up to like a corridor. So yeah, I decided to go with that one because it felt like it gave a sense of unease because of how tight everything was. And I wanted to give a unique spin to an opera house stage like area. There we go. So yeah, I started tightening it up and making it more elongated. Then after a while, it still lacked some of that personality that I was looking for. So I just decided to change the centerpiece, which is this bit right here, to have a bit more personality. So I started sketching in like a giant statue where his hands would have strings attached to the curtain. So when the curtain gets pulled, the strings attached to his hands will like pull the curtains apart. So it gives off this like ominous vibe. Yeah, the sides, the I guess the audience booths. I had a great idea for that I will move on to once this is. So yeah, I just started making his giant head statue thing, and then during the process of this, when I showed them, they were working on a storyboard for when. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say spoilers. I think I'll just skip that. I'm not sure if I'm allowed. As you can see, this is the final result. Then I started coloring it to give it a bit more atmosphere and mood. This is the work in progress. For the sides of the audience booths, I decided to go with these are like some fancy puppet stages that I found on the internet. So I thought it'd be real neat to make those the puppet stage booths themselves, and they would as Billy would inspect them, they would open up and have the puppet audience inside it. This is the reference of the opera house. Of not really an opera house, it's more like a theater. That's why it's over here. For the storyboard, I sketched since I already had an idea of what the stage would look like, or at least the top part of the stage. I helped Ash sketch this up, and I also gave a breakdown of how the head of the statue, which is Fantokyo, if you haven't noticed, would collapse. I think they posted the actual storyboard on their Twitter. If you want to check that out. And something I didn't notice when I was drawing this was I asked one of the biggest not challenges but steps when creating the stage was every time I made a decision for a stage, I had to ask Ash, who created the character, was this something Fantokyo would do? So one of the things I asked her was, do you think he has a big ego, and would he have a giant statue of himself in the middle of the stage? And she agreed. And when I sketched this up, I then realized that it had a nice visual metaphor of the statue, because right here is where Fantokyo would be floating above the player, and it looks like the statue is kind of manipulating him. And I'm like, cool, that's a nice story beat that I intentionally let in. I made some quick sketches of an isometric view of the stage, so I will get a sense of the space. So this is the stage right here with the statue. I plan on putting like a collapsed chandelier down here. Then this is the reverse shot. This is where the player would enter. So they enter from a second level and roll down the staircase. And this is a view, zoomed in view of that. So while sketching this out, I put some posters you can see here in the walls. And I thought, okay, what would the posters have? So I came up with some concepts for Fantokyo posters that he would. So the idea is that we would get like some pop cultural references and just slap his character onto that, because he has this like idea that all his these stories are boring, but let's make it better by adding me into it. So we went with I went ahead and sketched up some pop cultural references and some inspired versions, just in case it was too referential to the original source. So like here we have the classic Jaws poster, but then I made a version that was shark inspired and not exactly following it. And the idea for these set of posters were, if the player looks at them and inspects them, they would see that those are the encounters during the boss fight. So there's a shark, there's a bear, there's a bunch of mops. So it's a nice little like hidden detail. If the player is observant enough, they can inspect all the posters and be like, oh, that's neat. They're telling us what's gonna happen anyway. That's also an excuse to just have some fun character-driven illustrations that they can use for marketing. Then next we go to the lobby. This is where the player will first enter the theater, and then after that they'll go to the boss room. I did a basic layout of what I wanted. Then I did another isometric view so I can get a sense of scale of everything. I didn't do any perspectives because it was purely just to be a functional sketch, just so KD can get a sense of how big things are. So I have one of the characters they came up with for this space is a little ticket master kind of person, which is where he's gonna be in this little booth, but it's supposed to look like a Muppet that's being controlled by Fantokyo. So he'll be like talking while he's hiding inside the booth, and then giving the player and Billie a ticket so he can go see the show. On the wall, you can see more of the posters that we will be making, and I made this like I guess line for when the player sees that they'll have to go through the line. So when I conceptualized this, I expected them to follow the rules, and I gave the idea that if the player follows the rules like that, the ticket master will be very pleased that they follow the rules and everything. But this is what we fully expect the player to do. So now they have the idea of making those ropes and tassels physics based, so they can like run around and mess it up. And if the player does that, the Ticketmaster will react negatively and potentially make the boss the next levels a bit harder. So we wanted this small space to be an introduction to the idea that the player's choices outside of dialogue, like anything they do, would affect the gameplay. Then I did a quick little color sketch of the location so that the booth will be here, and then this will be the entrance to the actual boss fight. And the last bit I'll show is some quick thumbnails of what the Ticketmaster would look like. So his booth is very. I want to add more to that creepiness factor. So on the top of that, you could see these other puppets that kind of look like Fantokyo, and these hands that are like massaging him very sensually. And then yeah, you see here like a little doodle of the Fantokyo puppet Muppet, I guess. There was a time where we where I thought that maybe it could be a Muppet of Billie, but they decided to go with a Muppet of Fantokyo instead. And I think that would be it. Oh yes, that's it. Any questions?
How long do you usually go with like these concept, like these initial concept, like how long do you usually take with these? Like how long do you guys usually put aside for this, for like laying out concepts and like doing all the different perspectives and things?
Well, I would say that because I started in the team really rather late, I would say that from my end, I would set aside like an hour or so for research and getting the idea of what kind of things I need to reference. Like that's mostly me gathering images about opera houses and theaters. Then another hour to get a sketch down. Then if I have something in mind, I usually just note it down and then do a little sketch, and then I ask them like, hey, do you think this will work? But generally, it's not very strict so far because we're really early in the process. I anticipate later when production kicks back up, they'll give me more deadlines and such. But for now, it's mostly like casual, hey, check this out. That's about it, yeah.
Cool.
All right, I think that's it.
Thank you.